Hey, Shalom. All praise unto Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles of GreatMillStone. Honors you brothers that be pushing his truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. So I wanted to do this video. And I think we had a similar sort of situation in New Zealand. And now apparently there's a similar sort, there's a downturn or visible downturn in the housing growth out there within Sweden, and I thought it would be a good angle to come into the prophecies dealing with the destruction of Esau. Okay, his economy. All right, because we know that a major part of Esau's tyranny, when it comes to martial law and the setting up in the so-called New World Order, we know that a part of that is going to be the down change in the economy. Okay, so you're going to see a lot of crashes. Okay, market crashes, and then restarts. And we had a few last year, but really the big ones are coming. And this is where this article comes into play, which was on the Express, and it was published in, I forget what date this was published on, but a couple of months back. Okay, and this one's good. I can't remember whether I did a video on it, but I've just found it now, so apologies if I've already done a video on it. But this one would be slightly different anyway, because we're looking at the prophecies as pertaining to the book of Habakkuk, the second chapter, how destruction to him, woe to him that is laden with thick clay, which is debts. And as you know, that's how our whole economy works. And that's why I thought it would be beautiful to start from this article on Zero Hedge, because this article goes into the housing bubble. Now, how they start it is important, because that's what really is reflected throughout the whole U.S. economy, British economy, and all economies throughout the whole entirety of the whole planet. Okay, there's a thing within business that says you need money to make money. Okay, and how people get their money is what? They get their money via a credit line. All right, even if you're a top businessman, a couple of $1 million in the bank, well, that's your money. Okay, there's a thing called business. Your business identity, your business is its own separate entity. And so if you're setting up a business, what you could effectively do is you could take a loan out as a business, and if that business goes bust, well, there's certain types of banks or certain type of businesses, okay, because you actually these are things that Jake doesn't know, you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. There are differences between incorporated businesses, okay, limited businesses, okay, etc., etc. All right, and certain of those businesses types, for instance, a limited business, they could take out a loan for £1 million to do whatever they want. All right, but if that business goes bust, okay, well, guess what? They don't have to pay that loan, because it's limited to what? Limited only to the business. Private assets is not touched, and that's how Esau has run his finances. Okay, he's run everybody into the depths of debt, and that was all by design, because in the depths of debt, they're gonna say, look, you're the ones that put yourselves into this economic disadvantage or bad position, whatever you want to call it. And as a result, this is the solution that we're going to give you, and this is going to be a rationing chip, which is going to be the RFID chip spoken about within the book of Revelations. And that's what they're going to present it as. This is your solution because you messed up. And as for the vast majority of the people out there, it's going to be a good deal. They're going to see it as a way to get out of the thousands and tens of thousands of pounds of debt that they have acclimatized, which is all good and well. But remember, this whole thing of a bubble is like pass to parcel, okay? So when you had a tulip bubble, check that out, or any type of bubble, euphoric bubble, economic bubble in the past, what happened was you had a thing pretty much like musical chairs, okay? And the figures get more and more ridiculous, and people give more and more up to get that thing that they feel that was worth it. Okay, so for instance, when you had tulips coming out there from France, and it was a big thing out here within, I think it was in Britain, because that was like a rare thing. We had people pretty much selling their whole livelihood, okay, to get those tulips, in the hope that they're gonna flip it and double up the price. But that's the thing on musical chairs, because when the euphoric music stops, okay, that metaphorical euphoric music stops, okay, then guess what? Whoever's left with the tulip was out of pocket. And that's how it works. And the elites know that. And that's how the elites basically got control of the entirety of the whole world, by crashing the markets, setting up markets, crashing them again. Because every time you crash them, well, if you're in the right chair, then you could design it to where you're going to be in the right chair. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela's jacked up, but who owns all of those places now? It ain't the people out there within Venezuela. It's the corporate entities that only exist in offshore banks. And they don't get taxed on their what, okay? It's only you, me, all right, and Jose, okay, that get the taxing, okay? But that's how these elites navigate. And they've orchestrated all types of different economic bubbles out there throughout the four corners of the earth. This is just one example of that. To the end, you're going to have what is spoken about. Oh, whoops, we don't want that. To the end, all right, you're going to have this situation pop off right here, okay, where it's talking about a crash, all right, and, you know, pretty much 10 years on from 2008, I'm sure I did a video on it, but pretty much 10 years from after 2007, you had a 2008 crash. The economy, basically, they're saying it looks exactly the same as it did prior to 2008 crash. But see, the problem is, you didn't fix all the issues that you had out there within the 2008 crash. What happened was the market crashed. Okay, they liquidated our government funds to get it back to a staggering state, not even standing, but rather staggering, and it's limping. It's been limping ever since. And what's going to happen now is it's going to fall over, but that's necessary in order to have the chip come out there. All right, so let's go to this article. I'm only going to read a little bit of it though, because we don't really need to get into all of that. Okay, so it says Sweden's property bubble is probably the world's biggest, despite it's getting relatively little coverage. And what you see with the elites is they do certain covert operations, all right, of which economic bubbles within restricted regions, or pushing out the chip. I think, where is it? Switzerland is a completely cashless society. London, that's another microcosm that they've got out there. Those are all what you know as testing phases, beta testing a certain project that they have. And what they're beta testing here, okay, if you will, is how people are going to respond out there within Sweden, right, with this bubble that they've created there. Okay, and then they could have it roll out throughout the four corners of the earth. It says Sweden's property bubble is probably the world's biggest, despite it gets relatively little coverage in the mainstream financial media. Although that might be about to change. Warnings about the bubble are not new. It says in March 2016, Moody's issued out a explicit warning, right, that Sweden's negative interest rates were propagating an unstable housing bubble. And what they mean by that is pretty much when you're getting out of there alone, which is the most difficult thing to do when it comes to housing and that. Okay, you might have the cachet, but the loan and the interest may actually mean that you don't have the money. For instance, if you take out, you got 10 grand in the bank, you're gonna buy a house for I don't know, 100 grand. Well, you pretty much on paper, if you're putting it on the 10%, you got the money. But when you look at the interest side of things, let's say the interest is like, I don't know, that 10%, which is never that high, but it's like 10%. Well, you're gonna have to pay a lot more money than just 100 grand, and that's what makes it difficult to buy property, because you're not just looking at the number that you start out with. You're looking at the number that you end up with after you've charged all of that debt after the couple of years, okay, with that 10% or 5%, whatever. So what they was doing in Sweden is they had changed it to negative rates. So effectively, they was cutting off the loan. Okay, they was taking money off of the loan that you had borrowed. So you're taking out 100 grand, and they put a negative 0.1 or whatever. Well, a certain amount of that money is going to be taken off of the loan that you've taken. Instead of having it to where usury is added. Okay, effectively the bank was paying you a little bit, okay, for you to get that property. Now what happens is people get very excited, get overexcited. That's what you got. That's what's called euphoria. You're excited about these things, and they think that they can buy it, flip it, and make some money on top. And that's not always the case. And that's why it's called a bubble, because bubbles burst. Okay, that thinking of flipping it, that's what's really the driving force in the economy. Okay, you're talking about fractional reserve banking and all of these different things. The main driving factor in this economy is that people believe that they can make money out of it. That's it. The same thing with the housing economy. People believe that they can make money after the house is going to be worth something. There's that belief. And the same thing applies to money. Money doesn't really, as in reserve notes, bank notes, okay, they don't really mean nothing. Gold and silver, as pursuant to the scriptures, they were supposed to mean something, because that's intrinsic value. I believe intrinsic is the correct word. And what you have out there now is you have currency, and currency doesn't mean anything until especially when people start believing in it. It means nothing. For instance, when you have the rise of Bitcoin and other alternative payment tenders, then you have a downward spiral of the value of the economy. Another example of that is you take the US dollar as an example, and you say pretty much the value of the US dollar has gone down as more and more people stop believing it and stop using it. It goes to show you that this whole thing is a thing of belief, okay? But when it comes to righteous money, it's not a thing of believing that that thing is valuable. It's that thing is actually valuable. And value comes off of what? Rarity. Okay, so gold, silver, diamonds, rubies, those are things that are rare, okay? And that's why they've always been and will always be real money, okay? And you never have a bubble. There's no such thing as a gold bubble. Gold's intrinsic. There's only so much amount of gold in the world. And whoever's got the most is rich. It's just that simple. Okay, so with that completed, let's go to read this a little bit of this, and then I'll get some scriptures and call it quits. So let's just read a little bit of this, because I probably did a video on it before. It says, financial crash 10 years on from 2007. Experts warn debt bubbles could be worse. And I might use that as a title, provided that I haven't used that as a title before. It says, a decade since the financial crisis brought the world to its knees, expert fear a repeat could be again to shatter the world. And it's simple, yeah, of course. Have you changed anything since that? They had no assets, no jobs, no income loans during before the 2008 crash, but you got exactly the same thing happening now, okay? And you got it more so, because people saw all of the houses that was being bought in 2007, and they feel pressure to buy into that, and all of this, that, and third. And hey, the thing was, they just rebranded it, they renamed it. Okay, when they was hashing all of those what we call as dirty loans, dirty money. Okay, bad loans. And that is to say, if you have a business and the turnover of the business is £50 after £50 at the end of the year. Okay, that's what they make on top of their, that's it. That's their profit. Okay, and they took out a loan over 5 years. A loan over 5 years is a grand. Well, guess what? They ain't gonna be able to pay that. Okay, you apply the same theory to housing, and you got it to where you had people that were given houses. Okay, they bought houses, and they wasn't making up payments. Well, that's a bad loan. Okay, that's what you call a high risk loan. And what they was doing is, they was hashing up all of those loans that everybody's got, because that's what you use as a security. Okay, in other words, you can buy against that, because if you got a good person, not a good person, a person that's got good credit is likely to pay that loan back. So effectively, you could sell that loan as a security and trade against that security. Okay, you could trade that against that security. That is to say, all right, if a certain business wanted 60 million pounds, all right, from a bank, they could get that 60 million pound of investment. Or if they wanted to invest in a long-term security, they will buy that security. Okay, because they know they're gonna get the payments back from all of those people that have got that debt. Okay, so what happens is they bought all of those securities, but not all of them were good securities. So when people started losing jobs, we had a domino effect and the whole thing's crashed, didn't it? Okay, and the same thing, you've got it now. You've got people with auto loans and they can't pay the auto loan, car loans back. That's how everybody's getting cars these days. Nobody's buying cars anymore. That's ridiculous. Nobody buys cars anymore. You get a loan. Okay, and that whole thing of 2007, you got the exact same thing happening right now, man. Okay, so it says the start of the subprime housing that are obliterated banks and financial markets across the world and pinpointed at 2007. On this day, banking against BNP Paribas investment partners announced it had suspended the valuation for 3 of the funds exposed to the US subprime housing market because of the complete evaporation of liquidity in certain market segments of the US market, etc., etc. I'm not going to really read into that because I did a video on that exhaustively in the past. It's called what's it called now? It's based on a movie, but it's in the stuff that I did in the past. So I'm just going to hit one precept, and then that's pretty much it. So this is the book of Habakkuk, and I'll read this. The 4th verse says, "Behold, his soul which is in him is not upright, but the just shall live by faith." And that's what we live by. Okay. And the point I want. Oh, this is good, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee. Okay, one element that they've used to spoil these nations is debt. Okay, especially them elite banking families. That's how they run things, man. Debt. They've used that debt to spoil nations, completely ruin Venezuela through debt. Okay, went out there. Now the whole country's in all types of debt to other countries and other banks, and ultimately the elite banking families, the Rothschilds and all that. Now they're just buying up land for cheap. Land with vast oil reserves just for cheap. Crazy. So let me just bear with me. There's a point in here. Okay, I think I'm nearly there. No, I'm past it. I'll search it. Put thick clay. So now Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. Okay, Habakkuk 2:6 says, "Shall not all of these take up a parable against him, a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his." Why is it not his? Because you'll see a person's land in Venezuela, in Brazil, whatever country it is, and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to say, we're going to hold your assets for you, okay? And we'll give you a piece of paper. You could trade on the piece of paper. That's an IOU, okay? And after a while, people will start just trading IOUs instead of going to the bank. Now the bank's got all of the gold. And that's what's happened. That's how they actually set up the Rothschilds bank, the Rothschild, okay, in Russia. That's how they set up. And they just didn't pay up the gold, kept it to themselves. That's how they became rich. Stealing, thievery. These Jews are thieves. That might be a subtitle. Okay. It says, and that's factual. You want to go check out how a bank works. A bank is nothing but theft. I'm not talking about RBS and all of this. These are small time thieves, man. That's what you call petty criminals. And big international banks, those are big time criminals. They say niggas are criminals. Those are the real niggas there, man. The so-called Jews are the real niggas, man. Okay. Hey, the scripture even says that. Woe unto him that increases that which is not his. How long? To him that is laden with thick clay. And you look at that. That's wages, heavy debts. Okay, heavy debts. And that's what we was reading and seeing in the article. So hopefully that was a verification. Yahweh Shem Yahshai Barakatah. Okay, all praises unto Yahweh Shem Yahshai. Call hello Yahweh Shem Yahshai. And double honesty, Apostles of GreatMillStone. Allah's will I get to do this pretty soon again. And shalom.